two friends returned to the woods they thought they knew. They had grown up exploring forests, building shelters, sleeping under trees. Years later, after life had pulled them in different directions, they decided to go back, just once. What they found wasn't supposed to be there, and what they heard made them leave everything behind. The two men had spent most of their childhood outdoors. One of them lived on farmland bordering a vast forest, and the woods had become their second home. In their teenage years, they started walking along old railroad tracks, camping nearby, fishing from bridges, hiding when trains passed. Nothing ever happened. The trips were quiet, peaceful, almost perfect. Years passed. One summer in the mid-90s, they both happened to be back in their hometown at the same time. Nostalgia and alcohol did the rest. They decided to take one final walk along the tracks. Just one night, just like before. Early in the morning, they were dropped off near their usual starting point. But instead of following their familiar route, they chose to head in the opposite direction. They had maps. They knew the land. There was no reason not to. The day passed quietly. They stopped on a bridge, talked, smoked, rested. As evening approached, they chose a dense section of forest near the tracks and prepared to camp. Before settling in, they decided to scout the surrounding area, just to make sure no one lived nearby. Less than 100 yards into the forest, down a small incline, they saw it. A structure barely visible through the trees. At first, they assumed it was an old shed, possibly a sugar shack, but as they moved closer, its shape became clear. It was a church. The building was small and sagging, its wooden planks darkened by rot and moss. A weathered cross still stood on its roof. There were no doors, no windows, just open frames. Inside, rows of pews could be seen. At the front, a raised platform. There were no footprints, no roads, no sign that anyone had been there recently. They didn't enter. They turned back immediately, choosing a campsite on higher ground, with the hill between them and the church. It felt safer that way. Night fell. As they lay in their hammocks, talking quietly, a sound reached them from the direction of the church. At first, they weren't sure what they were hearing. Then they realized it was singing, not loud, not distant, but clear. The sound continued without growing closer. They left their hammocks and moved silently uphill, using only moonlight to guide them. From the ridge, they saw light flickering in the distance. Candlelight, coming from inside the church. The singing continued, foreign, unfamiliar, not quite recognizable as any language they knew. Then it stopped. A single male voice began to chant, deep, booming. Call and response followed, one voice speaking, many voices replying in song. The chanting rose into a long, sustained wail, so loud and so disturbing that one of them covered his ears. Then, silence. Moments later, figures began to emerge from the church. They walked in a single line, holding hands. Some carried flashlights. The lights began to move uphill, toward the forest, toward them. They ran down the hill, through the woods, onto the tracks. They grabbed what they could and followed the rails until they reached a road. In the distance, flashlights moved erratically, shaking as their holders ran. Eventually, the lights disappeared. They reached a town, found a gas station, and called for help. People later told them it was probably kids playing a prank. But the voices they heard that night didn't sound like children. They never returned to that place.